Have you ever felt like you struggle with beliefs like, I'm bad, there's something wrong with me, I'm flawed, I'm not good enough, I'm unworthy? If so, then you probably struggle with toxic shame. Now, shame in and of itself is not good or bad. It's just an emotion. It's a normal, basic emotion. But toxic shame is different. There's nothing healthy about it. Healthy shame causes us to feel bad about ourselves, not only something that we've done, but also feeling disappointed with ourselves, but it motivates us to take action, to repair, to care about people, to change, to grow from the experience. Toxic shame causes us to implode. It's almost like we see the badness in ourselves so close up that we can't see anything around it. We lose hope. We feel like we can't do anything to change the situation because we are just that bad that there's no hope. And so it causes us to shut down and to be stuck staring only at our flaws with no way out. And so in this video, I want to talk about something we accidentally do wrong when we're trying to heal from toxic shame, and how a somatic experiencing exercise called Pendulation can help us to heal shame the right way. That being said, let's dive in. For those that don't know me, my name is Michelle. I'm a trauma-informed coach. I'm a somatic experiencing practitioner. I'm also the founder of the School of Transformation, which I consider to be nervous system rehab. This is a monthly membership where I meet live on Zoom with survivors from all over the world that are learning how to come back home into their body, learning how to be the person who they truly are instead of who the trauma turned them into. So if that's something that you feel could be useful for you, make sure to check out my live weekly Zoom meetings. So every emotion comes with a sensation. You think of excitement as having butterflies in your stomach, right? You think of fear of public speaking and there's a lump in your throat. So our emotions are accompanied by sensations, and shame is one of the most difficult sensations to feel like you can tolerate. It's the lowest vibration of all emotions, and it just feels so heavy and so uncomfortable. If you were made to feel shame when you were small, then your nervous system views the sensation of shame as a threat, because you were so young, you were so small when you felt it. It was so overwhelming that your nervous system wound up compartmentalizing it just so that you didn't have to feel it, because it felt so overwhelming. And so when we're feeling shame as an adult, our nervous system remembers it from when we were a child, and it doesn't think we have the capacity to be with it. So what tends to happen is shame starts coming up in our body, and our nervous system flings us into either fight, flight, freeze, or fawn to try to keep us from feeling that sensation. So the reason I bring this up is because in order to heal from toxic shame, or to get to the place where we can feel it to heal it, we have to have that capacity to have it be able to come up in our body without going into a trauma response, or without our midbrain or survival brain taking over. So I mentioned in the beginning that I was going to share with you the wrong way to heal toxic shame. So the wrong way to heal it is to try to just pulverize it or shove ourselves forward despite it, ignoring it. So what some people do that is wrong is they start trying to regulate out of it. They'll feel shame coming up, and they'll do an exercise that changes their emotional state. So there are things I can do that will change the state of emotion in my body. I can go from shame to peace. I can go from shame to laughter and joy. But that doesn't mean I healed the shame. It means I pushed it aside and I helped my body to go into a different emotion. And again, there are times we need to do that when we don't have time to work through and process an emotion. But changing your state isn't healing the toxic shame. Now, people that have had maybe good enough parenting where they were allowed to have strong emotions, which, by the way, what infant or toddler does not have strong emotions, right? They go into anger, they go into frustration, they go into sadness, they go into joy and laughter. And if they were allowed to have those strong sensations and have somebody compassionately help them when they were struggling in a strong sensation, then they have the ability to allow an emotion to come up and to be with it. But if you grew up in an environment where emotions were either ignored, not talked about, where you weren't allowed to express what you were feeling, or you were bad if you expressed an emotion strongly, well, we learn to stifle our emotions. We learn to do everything in our power to not feel them. And so when it comes to shame, people with good enough parenting can feel it, but people that have had a traumatized nervous system from traumatic childhood events, ranging from neglect to abuse, struggle to feel like they have the capacity to be with shame without getting flung into a trauma response. So people that had good enough parenting, to me, are kind of like this sparkling water bottle. Now, bear with me, this is all going to make sense, right? So there's a chemical reaction needed in order to have the nice fizz that comes with soda or sparkling water. It's the carbon dioxide that's put in the water, and then when the air hits it, you get that nice fizz. Well, I liken that nice fizz to somebody that has a nervous system with the capacity to handle emotion. So for example, get the nice fizz and there's no eruption. But if you were like myself and many others that did not have good enough parenting, where emotions were stifled, or you were made to feel bad about emotions, so they would come up and then you'd have to shove them down, and no one ever helped you to handle your emotions, then you're kind of like this bottle with the chemicals all over the place. Shame starts coming up in the body, and there's an eruption. Now, I have a towel beneath me, so all is well, but you get the point. What happens when you have a traumatized nervous system is when shame starts coming up, it comes up like an explosion, and then we're flung into a trauma response, and we will either fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. We'll fight at the other person that caused the shame, right? Thinking that it's only because of what they did. They triggered me. It's their fault that this happened. Or we'll go into flight, where the shame is coming up, but we can't be with it because it'll explode. So we get busy. We try to outrun it. We try to be so busy that we don't even notice it. Or we'll freeze. Now we're dissociated. We're disconnected. Or we'll fawn. We will freeze how we really feel, and we will show up. We will socially engage how somebody else wants us to be in order to not feel the shame that's coming up. But none of that helps us to heal shame. The first step, though, in order to be able to overcome and work through the toxic shame that's so deeply entrenched in our nervous system, is building the capacity to be with shame. Now you think of the sparkling water eruption, right? It's also something that's similar to that is adding baking soda and lemon. Right? If you add a lot of lemon juice to baking soda, you're going to get a big eruption. But if you add it in small doses and you let it fizzle a little bit, it doesn't have that same response. Well, that's what we need to do with our body. Instead of letting shame come up like an explosion that dysregulates us, we want to learn how to allow little bits and moments of shame to come up in a way that shows our body that we aren't small children anymore. We're not infants that can't handle it. We're adults. We can handle shame in the body. It won't kill us. But we have to teach our nervous system that, and it doesn't get taught with our mind. Our adult self learns cognitively and consciously with our mind. We can watch a video and get this. Our nervous system, our autonomic nervous system, learns through experiences, through sensations. And so one of the best ways to build that capacity in the body to be with shame is through pendulation. My next video is going to be a pendulation exercise on how to be with shame. So if you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you're notified when that video is up. But before I put that video up, I wanted to just explain a couple of things to remember when you're learning pendulation. So this video is what you want to see first, and then you want to go into that pendulation exercise. So some tips to remember when you're learning to pendulate. The first tip is to always start with safety. Even though we want to build the capacity to be with shame, we don't want to just dive headfirst into shame and allow it to come up, because we're going to get that eruption effect. If we first allow our body to be in safety, it now has a resource so that when we pendulate to shame and it starts to come up, we have a resource to go back to. So safety is always what we start with. Tip number 2 is about consistency. Doing one pendulation exercise on YouTube or with someone else is not going to heal shame. Just like going to the gym once is not going to give me muscles, right? It's about consistency. So if we want to build resilience in our nervous system, it's not the one thing we learn to do. It's not even oftentimes about learning more things as much as it is mastering what we do know. So being able to be with shame, what you want to do is very much like when you go to the gym and you start off with 5-pound weights and then you increase and then you're up to 15, then you're up to 25. That's showing your capacity to be with stronger weights. Well, we want to do that with shame when we pendulate. In the beginning, our pendulations may be short. We may not be able to stay with shame for a long time because we feel like it's going to erupt. But with time, the way you know that you're healing and really processing and working through shame is the length of time and intensity that comes up when you are pendulating. So your first time bringing up shame might feel overwhelming and scary, and it might feel dysregulating. As you do it consistently, you'll notice, oh, I couldn't even be with shame for 10 seconds. Now I can literally sit with shame in my body for 5 minutes without checking out, without going into a trauma response, and I can actually be a witness to it. I don't become it. It doesn't flood me. I can now be a witness to it. I can be the adult, the compassionate, loving adult to this piece of me that is feeling bad, flawed, or unworthy. And the last tip that I'm going to give is to get support when needed. Remember, working with shame can be extremely overwhelming, especially if it's so entrenched in our nervous system and it's been there since childhood. Oftentimes, we may need help. Doing this alone can be too much at times. So finding a therapist, finding a somatic experiencing practitioner, finding support is crucial. And that being said, I want to invite you, if you're looking for affordable quality help on your inner healing journey, I want to invite you to check out the School of Transformation, which again, I consider it nervous system rehab. It's where we do the inner healing work to come back home into our body, and we do it together. That co-regulation in a group setting can be so absolutely helpful. You can join just for a month and cancel if it's not for you, but being able to join for the month really lets you taste and see if this is something that could be beneficial on your emotional healing journey.